This format is going to be a little different. Typically, I use the camera that is in the back, but for some reason, the microphone is messing up. And I wish I could connect this microphone to that, but it's a huge and long process. I don't think that camera supports, unfortunately. So, yeah, there's that. But anyway, all of that talk out of the way, I really wanted to sit down here and do a quick review on the brand new Jessie Ware album, That Feels Good. And listening to this album just made me feel good. But yeah, recently I've been getting into Jessie Ware's music. I know that Fantano ranked her as the album of the year back in 2020, and I saw the video obviously back when it came out, and I wasn't aware of Jessie Ware, who she was, or any recollection of what type of music she created. So I'm ashamed that it took me this long to know who Jessie Ware is and to listen to her music. But yeah, anyway, a few months ago, I gave "What's Your Pleasure" a listen, and honestly, I was just engulfed into this masterful, created disco dance floor esque vibes that just teleported me. Like it really teleported me, and it just gave me so many good vibes. And I'm still replaying a lot of the tracks from that album till this day. It's honestly great. It's concise. It's true. It doesn't feel like there's like a lot of filler that overtakes the album. The bops I get out of the album has an insane amount of replay value. They are sharp and they're meticulously crafted. And Jessie Ware is just in control of what she wants to do with those songs and with that album in general. It feels like just pleasurable listening to that album. But yeah, anyway, fast forward to this album, That Feels Good. The rollout for this album was pretty interesting. She was releasing a lot of singles. I think it was like four singles to this song to this album, which is kind of crazy because this album is only 10 tracks long and 40 minutes of runtime, which is pretty short for an album. But hey, I mean, even though she did kind of like spill, I guess, some of the best parts of this album, we still have a lot of material here that even without these singles feels absolutely great and well polished. But yeah, I heard an interview with Fantano because she was interviewed by Fantano, and she said that she wanted this whole experience to be different from What's Your Pleasure, and she did say that What's Your Pleasure was going to be her final album and that she was going to retire. So I'm glad she didn't retire and this album came out, because this album was just so great. But yeah, anyway, and she said that she wanted this album to be its own thing, not a direct sequel or correct copycat of What's Your Pleasure. And after listening to this album multiple times, I can safely say that it doesn't feel at all like like a copycat or like a direct sequel to What's Your Pleasure, or just ripping off the sound and style. Yes, it does have some influences, but it doesn't feel like it's just like a What's Your Pleasure remake, if that makes sense. Opening track of this album, That Feels Good, the self-titled song, obviously, sort of transcends you into this like palace type of transcends you into this palace type of area where everything is just like material, everything is pleasurable, everything is like its own fantasy realm. You guys ever play Persona 5? Like you guys know when you enter into a palace, obviously like the palace is supposed to be like a bad thing, like part of the cognition of the boss and stuff. But it's like when you get to the palace, everything feels perfect. Everything feels kind of like authoritarian in the sense, and well organized and everything. So it's like that's the vibe that I'm getting. I'm getting a vibe of like everything is just perfect. Everything is amazing. Everything feels grand. It's orchestral. It's like it's honestly just insane and bizarre to listen to a song of this much of a high quality. And what I like about it is that Jessie did mention this in the interview, is that she's using her voice in different ways that she's ever used before. She's using it in more, I guess, expressive ways in comparison to What's Your Pleasure, which is kind of insane because What's Your Pleasure was very expressive, and it relied on a lot of her of how she would say things and stuff like that, her performance. But yeah, I would say in this album, I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but I would say in this album, she's much more expressive in comparison to What's Your Pleasure, which is a really high goal to meet, honestly. But yeah, it's something super hard to just accomplish because she does use her voice to convey a specific emotion and just to, I guess, tell a specific story, but it's like a very unique way of for expression. I mean, I think in tracks such as Shake the Bottle, which is a direct sexual innuendo of what I guess turns her on and stuff, she kind of goes and describes the relationships she's had with previous men, and is how it's like every sort of guy had their own like pro, but then they had a huge flaw, and she explains the reason as to why she sort of cut them off and stuff. It's a very funny and quirky story, and I think how it's expressed in here feels like almost like theatrical, and sort of like satirical in a sense, in which I really appreciate a lot. Freaking Me Now is like one of the most electrifying songs I've heard in this record out of her whole discography. It's honestly crazy. The sample chops that are thrown in here with the shit there, break it down. It's kind of crazy. It's thrown in there. It sounds very electronic, and it feels less disco and it feels more electronic and more like turning up in the club. Like if it's like a club banger, to put in other words, and it just reminds me, it sort of gives me the picture of, imagine if Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B made WAP into a more electronic song, if that makes sense. That's how it feels. That's how it really feels in my personal point of view. Speaking of the electronic influences and sprinkled through his album, Free Yourself has a huge sidechain in its kick and bass drum, which I don't necessarily mind. Sometimes it can be slightly overpowering, but I think it's great. It turns out as like in your face, but not necessarily in a way that turns you off a bit. And I really do like the electronic Latin. I really do like the piano chords that are playing in the background. Even though the progression is extremely simple, it plays direct tribute to the. It gives you that impression of like an old school, vintage electronic dance track that you would hear in the early 2000s. Kind of reminded me of "Break My Soul" by Beyonce. Pearls at first might give you this stereotypical radio mainstream pop song type of feeling at first, but the more you listen to it, the more you realize that it's far from that, and it develops and just progresses in a very natural and beautiful way. Her vocals are absolutely insane, and I would say it's one of her strongest vocal performances out of her whole discography. When she gets to the romance, let's just dance part and the oohs and stuff like that, it's just incredible. The hook is amazing with the shake it till the pearls fall off. I mean, that segment alone is honestly just fantastic. It's catchy, and it's exactly what a pop song should be and what elements it should have. It expresses, as I said, the strong vocal performance. The instrumental is beautiful and lush without it feeling like it overtakes the track by a lot. Background vocals are absolutely stunning. The chants, everything building up to it, it's just fun, quirky, and it's like everything you would want to listen to. The track Beautiful People kind of follows the same progression, and I will say it feels kind of redundant, especially when you have songs like Pearl and Begin Again, which I would say are much better, much stronger in comparison. But I do feel it has such a empowering substance and layer behind it. As to say, that beautiful people are everywhere, and it's cute. It's cute. It's like it's as I said, it's empowering, and it's sort of like a feel good type of song, which again it contributes to the concept of that feels good, which everything is pleasure, everything is perfect, everything in Jessie Ware's eyes. While it does have some flaws, she turns those flaws into diamonds. She turns those flaws into perfection, into something great, which is something that I admire as an artist. I mean, it's something that I really admire her for conveying and putting this into art. I'm sorry, Jesse, for comparing again to like Beyonce, but it reminds me a lot of Beyonce of Renaissance, because it reminds me of the themes and elements of being yourself, being out there, don't take shit from anybody, and just be yourself. Again, just be yourself, and your flaws eventually turn into pros depending on how you change that thing. The track "Hello Love" was something that I did not expect this album to pull off. It is a smooth R&B slash pop. It's not really pop. It's more R&B, if anything. The instrumentation is great. It's lush. It has a really nice and steady tempo. And the second half of the song flourishes into a saxophone eargasm breakdown that it's like, wow. Did not see that coming from miles. Did not see that coming at all. And it's amazing. It's enticing. It's beautiful. It kind of lures you into it, to like kind of like atmosphere where all you see are just like roses, and it's like it's all red or it's all pink. It gives you that vibe. It gives you the vibe that you are in the Garden of Eden. It gives you the vibe that you're just in an amazing scenario, an amazing place. But the concept and the message of this song follows Jessie Ware narrating an ex-lover who she stumbles across coincidentally. And she's sort of like, I guess, recollecting this old relationship, trying to make up for it. And she tries to propose the idea of getting back with this person. despite the issues they had in the past, which again contributes to the next track, Begin Again, which goes more into the details of trying to begin again that relationship. And that is and that song, by the way, is a very fluorescent and just flamboyant way of proposing to get back with someone. I mean, Begin Again has like it almost reminds me of that Feels Good in Pearls. Like it's a feel good song. It has just these huge orchestral horns and everything. It's honestly insane. I will say it kind of goes on for a bit too long. I think it's like clocking in around the 4 or 5 minute range. It's a bit lengthy in comparison, but I think it's great. I think the performances are strong. They're coherent. They're concise. I can feel everything she's trying to say in the song. I will say that the biggest, I guess, issue that I have for this, it's not really a huge issue that breaks the album in pieces or anything, but I think the lowest part of this album is the track Lightning, which it's not a terrible song or anything. It has an audience for it, but I think it plays much more in the safer part of this album. And it's a huge low point when you're comparing it to the other fantastic and fabulous songs in production that are sprinkled across this record. I mean, however, this album ends extremely strong with These Lips. It's sexy. It's like all over there, as I said, with the album entirely. And there's a lot of there's some lyrics in here that are just honestly extremely funny. I think one of the lines is, "These lips are wanted in multiple countries or over across the world. These lips can entice you. These lips can do like a lot of things, basically." And it's like wow. I mean, that gotta be kind of crazy. That's gonna be kind of crazy, but yeah, it sort of like hypnotizes you, or sort of changes you. She did something a similar topic. I think it was like "Read My Lips" and "What's Your Pleasure," where it had this sort of like same thing where it's like, if you read my lips, you sort of know the seduction, the innuendos I'm throwing at you. Like the indirect calls I'm throwing at you, that I want you and stuff. That sounds crazy with me explaining it, but it's sort of the idea that I get. But anyway, with These Lips, as I said, it gives you this thing. It gives you this sexiness. It gives you this like horniness, because this album has an extreme amount of horny innuendos. I think in Pearls, and I quote, she said, "I am a freak and I'm a mother," which is one of the lyrics of all time, to put it in that way. But yeah, there's a lot of like sexual innuendos sprinkled across the entire record, but I don't think it comes off as extremely cringy. I think it comes out as kind of funny, kind of quirky, and I mean it's on the same level as like WAP, to put it that way. But it's not like extremely dirty or obvious in that way. It's more of like hidden. It's more sensual, to put it that way. But hey, the music is amazing. So it's like I don't mind those innuendos, and I think that was the point you were trying to convey in the record. But yeah, anyways, I said with the outro track, the production is beautiful. It's wow. She pulls in together this mix of pop / disco. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It has an extreme amount of replay value, and it's like the perfect way to end a pop album, to put in other words. But yeah, man, that feels good. Just it feels so damn good just listening to that record. It's honestly one of the most exhilarating listens I've had all this year around. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's sexy. I've mentioned this a lot. It's horny as hell. And it's short. It's only 40 minutes, as I said. It's not too long, and it has an extreme amount of replay value. So it's like you can never really get bored of this record, and you can just bump this anywhere. I bumped this thing in the car, I don't know how many times. It always bangs, in the whip, and it always bangs on headphones, anywhere, speakers. Honestly, just anywhere is a great place to bump this record, even in the gym. Hey, there's some gym bops. Don't lie. There's some gym bugs. There's some gym bops. Don't lie with me. But yeah, honestly, a great record, and I would say a great follow-up from What's Your Pleasure. And hell, I mean, if Jessie Ware keeps up pulling up albums like this, I know she's had a discography back in 2012 and 2013. I know this, like, What's Your Pleasure isn't her debut record or anything like that. But if she keeps up with this creativeness and the powerhouse of producer she has behind, and the vocal range that she has, and she keeps expanding on it in every album that she drops from now on, she's going to be, like, one of the best artists of all time. I can definitely see that 100%. And I love how she's sort of giving this disco renaissance a very unique spin. And I would say personally, she's possibly the best one to pull out the disco renaissance. No hate to Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa is doing her thing. She's great and all the artists are doing the disco renaissance, are killing it. But I would say that Jessie Ware is the most interesting one out of the entire batch. And she's the one who really, I guess, wants to translate it in a more creative vision, to put in other words. But yeah, that's really all I had to say. What would I give this record? I'm gonna give it a strong 8 to a light 9 out of 10. It's honestly amazing. It's honestly great to listen to. You can play this really think anywhere. It gives you so much dopamine. It gives you so much pleasure to listen to. You got the reference. But yeah, what do you guys think about this record? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this review, leave a like as well. Subscribe and notification bell on so you don't miss an upload from me. And yeah, stay safe from COVID, everybody. Peace out and stream That Feels Good by Jessie Ware.